Uh, Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this remote webinar on the chances and challenges in education and exchange between Austria and Finland. This event is being organized by the Federation of Austrian Industries together with Business Finland and the Embassy of Finland in Austria. Thank you to all of you. My name is Eric Frey. I'm a senior editor here at the Vienna newspaper Der Standard. And this is an exciting topic and an exciting moment. Finland has a legendary reputation when it comes to education here in Austria. For years, we have looked at full of envy at the PISA results, compared the teachers' salaries and looked at their progress in digitalization. So given the challenges also for the Austrian educational system over the last 18 months during the COVID crisis, it is really a wonderful opportunity to learn more about what is happening in Finland and how will it continue. And I hope also for all our Finnish discussants and also the Finnish guests who are listening in, that they will also find interesting information and ideas coming here from Austria. Before introducing the panel, I would like to ask for the opening remarks by Pirkko Hämäläinen, the ambassador of Finland in Austria, and then of Christoph Neumeier, the Secretary General of the Federation of Austrian Industries. Mrs. Ambassador, you have the word.
Thank you, Mr. Frey. Dear educational expert in Austria and Finland, dear participants, ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to our seminar on COVID-19 chances and challenges in education. Today we celebrate World's Teachers' Day. This day gives a good opportunity to cast a glance at the previous 1.5 years. As we know, the recent year has been very demanding for every one of us, but especially for the younger generations in the society. COVID-19 had a huge impact on educational systems worldwide and revealed weaknesses mercilessly. This unique educational crisis was widely covered in the media, and teachers played a key role in crisis management. They were seen, and they were and still are as relevant to the system. They are genuine heroes of the daily life. At the same time, at least in Finland, COVID-19 also demonstrated the resilience and versatility of the Finnish education system. In the spring of 2020, Finland closed almost all the schools for 2 months and began distance learning with minimal interruption. At the latest, that was the point when the importance of digitalization and self-organized learning became clear to everyone. The digitalization at school has progressed by leaps and bounds, and teachers have had to keep pace. A crisis can also be a chance to rethink the way we normally do things, an opportunity to renewal and to rethink ways and means of education. Ladies and gentlemen, a school system in an individual country cannot be copied to others, but good practices and lessons learned are always worth sharing. That's why we are here today, to discuss the takeaways, chances and challenges, to learn from each other. I am very pleased that this exchange is going to take place now and at this moment. I want to thank the Federation for Austrian Industries for the excellent cooperation on this very important topic. We truly appreciate it. With these words, I wish you an interesting webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Ambassador. And now I would ask Christoph Neumeier for his remarks.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Eric. Yes, Madam Ambassador, ladies and gentlemen, We are, as Federation of Austrian Industries, really honored to be the Austrian cooperation partner for Business Finland and the Finnish Embassy in Austria, especially when it comes to educational topics. Traditionally, as it was mentioned, Austria looks towards Finland for its educational system, be it the role and image, the standing of teachers, the autonomous framework for schools, or in questions of digitalization. The Federation of Austrian Industries traditionally is a very active stakeholder in the Austrian education system. Not only do our member companies obviously need highly qualified employees, our main goal is to also contribute in the societal and political discussion about the future-oriented evolution of education, and especially to raise the overall quality of education. As Madam Ambassador mentioned, COVID has been a huge challenge, I think, for our educational systems, for the teachers, for the parents, for the pupils, for governments, I think. And at the same time, systemic accelerators like digitalization, self-organized learning, and the central role of teachers paved their way into public awareness like never before. And the pandemic has accelerated digitalization of education in a way that exceeded all of our expectations. I think in this context, I would like to especially thank Iris Rauskaller as the Chief Digital Officer of the Austrian Ministry of Education for her exceptional commitment. She is currently implementing the so-called 8-point plan for digitalizing Austrian schools, with measures ranging from devices, teacher training to standardized platforms. You see, we are starting in a very ambitious way, doing the groundwork and getting a lot of energy into the process. So I'm very glad that we have the opportunity to team up with Finland in this discussion, especially today on World Teachers' Day, as it was mentioned, because we all know the pedagogues are key persons for education, I think in Austria and Finland, I think worldwide. So thank you all for this excellent cooperation. Thank you, Eric Fry, for the moderation. And I would like to say a warm welcome from our side and yes, a fruitful discussion.
Thank you, Christoph. I will now like to introduce our panelist. Well, Iris Rauskaller was already mentioned. She's the Chief Digital Officer at the Federal Ministry of Education in Austria, of Education, Science and Research. She has also two other qualities. Well, one is that she is the link between Austria and Finland by having been born in Helsinki, I think, to a Finnish father. He's lived several years in Finland, so she really knows something about both countries and both systems. And she is also well known as having, after her relatively short stint as the federal minister for education in Austria in a transition government. From the kind of the official side in Finland, we have Joni Kangasniemi. I have to apologize. My Finnish pronunciation is atrocious, and it's I don't know whether it will get better in the course of the next 2 hours. So please accept that. He is the program director of Education Finland, which is the Finnish National Agency for Education. We have two experts who are heavily involved in the question of educational development and also digitalization. There is Tina Dvorak. She's the education expert at the Federation of Austrian Industries, and as Christoph Neumeier pointed out, education is a core issue for the Industriellen Vereinigung, something the organization has cared about enormously for many years and really pushed for changes and reforms and the improvements. And we have Tulia Lindström. She's the project coordinator for DigiOne, which is a national digital service platform for educational systems in the city of Vantaa. I looked it up on the map. It's north of Helsinki. I think it's part of the metropolis of Helsinki. In Austria, you would probably call it the Speckgürtel. And we have two practitioners of education. We have Ari Myllyt-Vita, a teacher trainer at the Wiki Teacher Training School in Helsinki, and also a lecturer for chemistry and mathematics. And Heinz Knaser, he's the vice principal and the IT expert for the Graz International Bilingual School. Also sitting here in this group is Victor Fleischer, working for the Federation, and he will be the one who will invite you participants into the discussion. If you we are too many people for you to raise your voice, but you can participate with the chat function. You can write in your questions or your short comments, and Victor Fleischer will select them and then introduce them, tell it to the panel, so they can, our panelists can respond to your questions and concerns. I would like to start with a kind of a word wrap, giving you each 1 minute, and please keep to this 1 minute. Don't go above it. Give us an idea from your point of view. What do you think is best in your own educational system of your country? And knowing what you know about the other country, be it Austria or Finland, what do you admire there? What do you envy? What do you respect? What do you think could be a model for yourself? Mrs. Rauskala, would you like to start?
Of course, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much. Give me just a minute to excuse being late. I mean, it's quite embarrassing as a chief digital officer not to be able to get into the WebEx meeting, unfortunately. But every now and then, you know, the setups behind and so on and so forth. So it took a time. So sorry for being late once again, but I really appreciate being part of this panel discussion. What I appreciate most about the Austrian school system is that it's open. It's open to anybody. We do not somehow push into private school sector as much as other countries do. So I think it's a fair and good education. It could be better, but it's a fair and equal good education to most of us, and it gives a chance, or could give a chance to every child. To be honest, this is the best thing about it, and I was quite happy in school, I have to commit, so I have a positive connotation. What I admire most about the Finnish system is that subjects are more interdisciplinary, and that teaching somehow is really brought to the perspective of the school child, at least from the Austrian perspective. Teachers are even more coaches than they are in Austria, so they coach the individual learning approach of each pupil. And this is what I admire most and would be happy to learn about more. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kangasniemi, besides that the system allows you to spend your time on a Caribbean beach, as we see from your background, what would your answer be on the Finnish point of view?
Yes, thank you. Because it's raining outside, I had the pleasure of having that as a background. But I can only compliment that the very important principle for any well-functioning education system is that it gives equal opportunity for all learners, and that's what we share with Austrian system. And maybe just to complement something more is that Finnish education system is also built on the principle of lifelong learning, and it's actually very flexible. You don't need to make any life-changing decisions early in your life, but you can flexibly move in between the education system and the working life throughout your careers. And what I envy from the Austrian system is that actually the cooperation with the industries is very well functioning in Austria. You are not only asking that please give us good graduates from the school, but you are also asking how can we help the education system to succeed.
Okay, thank you. Let's ask now the practitioners. Heinz Knaser, what would your answer be to this question?
Well, from a teacher's point of view, I'm very happy that here in Austria we have I would say, a pretty flexible curriculum here. As a teacher, you're pretty flexible as when it comes to the contents of your teaching. Of course, we have the national curriculum, but within this open framework, you can set your your key points, and it's so we're not strictly bound by by a curriculum. That I think is a very great asset to our system. Unfortunately, I do not really know too much about the Finnish system from, first of all, to speak not from first-hand experience. I can only comment on what I know from, media and so on. And I think that you have managed to put a lot of effort into providing a system, an environment where both students and teachers like to spend most of their time during the day.
Okay, thank you. And yes, Mr. Milivita.
Okay, thank you for this invitation to this panel. First of all, I think in our country, the educational equality and equity, it's I think main values, and when you talk about our educational system, and it's quite decentralized decision-making process, and so our teachers can make their own decision about what they teach, how they teach, not when, but at least they have a total control of their own teaching, and that's, I think it's quite crucial point of view from teachers' point of view. And I think it's also so that of course we have a good and quite modern curriculum nowadays, so we can concentrate on using different kind of pedagogical approaches and using digital tools all the time, and we can concentrate on developing our teaching and our education. And about Austria, what I know, it's quite little, but the equality also, of course, it's our common value, and I have heard that the connection between school system and schools and industry are much more relevant and open than it is in Finland, because we have some problems all the time that we don't discuss enough between schools and the working life.
Can I just ask you, is it this autonomy? Can teachers decide themselves what they are teaching and how they are teaching, or is it the schools and the principals who are trying to set the tone?
Teachers can decide. Principals.
Each teacher.
Yes, because principals, they have to create the opportunities for teachers. They are not saying anything. Of course, we have to follow curriculum, but teachers can decide how they teach and what they teach.
Okay. Okay, and now we'll ask the experts. Mrs. Lindström, what would your answer be?
Yes, thank you for being here. And I have a long history of as a teacher, but now I've been here in DigiOne project, so I can point that we have had quite long-term infrastructure development has been taken place long before COVID, so that the municipalities and the state has made it possible, like the laptops and all devices, and also those networks are working good in Finnish schools. from here, from south to north and from east to west. And also the curriculum-based teaching and learning. It's very, as Ali said, the teachers has the pedagogical freedom for that, but the curriculum gives the frames how to teach. And then from the Austrian side, I have had some schools which I have been connection or make same project. They were from Salzburg, and then I noticed that the languages and multicultural aspects in your country was very, very good, and or it's maybe natural to you when you are in the middle, in the heart of the Europe, and we are in Finland here in the north of the Europe. So these kind of things.
Well, it's good to hear praise about an educational system here in the Austrian media, and I think in media in other countries, usually we complain about the schools and about all the shortcomings, but overall we know both countries have a system, a school system, which is not only functional but is also producing generally very good results in most cases, which is one of the secrets to the economic and the political success of these countries, Austria and Finland. The last 18 months have been, or now we are actually it's even. Yes, it's now 18 months, were enormous challenges. I think the biggest challenge probably any school system has encountered over the last 50, 60 years, having to close because of a pandemic, having to switch suddenly into remote learning is just something which no school was at least expecting. Whether it was prepared is something we will find out now. And I would like to ask first Iris Rauskala to maybe outline just a little bit what were the most important steps that you took when you were faced at the beginning of the pandemic, and also in the course when things changed and developed, and you also learned from previous experience. And at this point, now that we are in a new school year where the general hope is that the worst is behind us, what conclusions did you draw from these from this experience?
Quite a difficult question, to be honest, because maybe one would expect that the answer would be straightforward. We push digitization, so we push digitization anyway, but digitization is not the goal to success for distance learning. So this is one of the learnings. Because distance learning, how we did it, out of a matter of fact, is not good blended learning, as I would differentiate. What we tried, of course, is to keep schools open. So to avoid total school closure, because for those kids most in need for structured day, for learning environment, for support and for help, it was tremendously important that schools stayed open. Therefore, we did not switch into a total distance learning period, but we kept schools open. And we see it now from the results from OECD that for youngest children, schools were more open, or on average more opening days than in other countries. And I think this is extremely important. We also put more resources into psychosociological support. So because we, of course, now after 1.5 years see that pupils and young kids, but also students really show signs of depression, show signs of fear of the future, and so on and so forth. Therefore, for pupils as well as for students, the resources for psychological support were increased. This is extremely important as well, and this has nothing to do with digitization. But then in the first period of school closure, first phase of the pandemic, we really also had a look into other countries. How would they somehow organize digital devices? And we saw it from the north again, that they would really give advices for those kids in need. So not for anybody and everybody, like it's usually the Austrian approach, but for those pupils really in need who do not have or would not have a mobile device from a parent, from a neighbor, from a library, or from any other source. So we handed out altogether 14,000 digital devices, and also the internet packages to pupils in need for federal schools, because we are responsible for resourcing federal schools. Most countries and Länder also had similar approaches, so they also gave digital devices to school pupils. Together with keeping schools open for as many days as possible, I think this was a quite good strategy to keep schools open. In a second field of action, we now really try to push the digitalization agenda. So we asked schools to please get communication and learning support infrastructure, so platforms. Might it be Austrian software, might it be Teams, might it be Google, might it be any kind of software infrastructure. We can only ask the Länder, because we are only responsible for federal schools, but we really try to organize communication and learning infrastructure. And then we try to get as many teachers as possible into massive open online courses. So to get a step into the digital world, and I think it was possible for most teachers who showed tremendous engagement on the other side. So really big thanks to all the teachers who are here, because it's not only the Teachers' Day today, but I think we should really thank those who really tried to make the best out of the situation. And we got, I think it was nearly a quarter of all the 120,000 teachers into our 2 massive open online courses on distance learning, getting them into practice of how easy it actually is to use learning platforms, communication devices, communication support systems, and so on and so forth. And now from this, we just go on building up the next steps. So we try to digitize the lower secondary level. Now we hand out devices starting with 5th and 6th grade, so that 10 and 11 years old pupils, they all get their own mobile device, and we will go on with whole lower secondary in the next 4 years. So lower secondary will not only have digital devices, but we will also step up in building up digital competencies. So this is the program after Corona, so to say, program to really speed up the digitalization of the Austrian system, not only in terms of infrastructure, supporting schools with internet, but also bringing digital competences into curricula, into teachers' competencies, and also pupils' competencies. And then the next step will be also to individualize the learning approach. So using digital support devices, tools for the individualized learning approach of pupils, but this will really be the next step. So there's a difference between distance learning and good blended learning, and so to say, interdisciplinary learning, so to say, and this is also our biggest learning, but we also saw how easy it is to just step into the digitized world, and I think we will simply go on here.
Thank you. I just realized that I skipped over our own Austrian expert before, Tina Dvorak, when asking about the good things about the school system. So I think I will put you in now into the middle, and maybe you can also give your thoughts on that issue, and maybe give a first short response also to what Mrs. Roskala had to say.
Yes, thank you, Eric. I think it's mentally more healthy to start with the things we are actually proud of in Austria, as you mentioned before. So I think we can be really proud of our vocational training. That's something internationally well known and quite successful. It was already mentioned that the exchange between education and industry economy works quite well in Austria. So I think that's really a value we have in our own country. But of course, one is envious of various kind of things on the PISA winner. First and foremost, I'd probably say that it's the societal agreement on an educational vision, which was made 10, 15, 20 years ago, including depoliticizing the administration and also the intensive efforts to transform learning into the 21st century. Then also mentioned was the quite high level of autonomy for schools and thus the greater scope for decision-making leadership. As a matter of fact, we know that this was one of the major success factors during the pandemic, given the freedom in schools to kind of find their own local solutions to to facing the pandemic. And last but not least, and not only because it's World Teachers' Day, of course, the image, the role model, the selection and the training of teachers in Finland, their image on a societal base is, I'd say, a lot more better than in Austria, although Austrian teachers do great work as well. But unfortunately, we haven't convinced the public, like the 100% of the public of that. And regarding Iris Rauskalla's outlining the 8-point plan, I'd really say, and I thank her and the Ministry of Education for this very ambitious and motivated way in now finally getting digitalization into Austria's schools. I know that it's a hard thing to do and it's a big ship we are starting to move here with a lot of interest groups and stakeholders, and it's not trivial at all to get this one started. We ventured that in the beginning of the pandemic, and distance learning, the main issue was to conserve existing strategies. So teaching was the same like in presence, but via Zoom conferences. So I hope that we could really manage to change that technology is here to rather transform practice when we put pedagogy at the very center of the whole transformational process. And therefore, I really think that we need to put the professional discourse and development on the center stage, to look at the paradigm on how we learn. That would be kind of my main issue for the whole transformational process, because still not everyone knows what digitalization actually is, besides devices.
Mm-hmm. We'll get back to that question. What is actually digitalization in education? What does it mean? But I would like to ask Mr. Kangasiniemi about your pandemic COVID experience. Did you also try to keep schools open as much as possible, or did you basically take advantage of maybe your further higher level of digitalization to say, okay, now we can close and kids can learn from home?
Yes, when the pandemic started, everybody was unaware what is going on, what is this epidemic about, and everybody was closing the doors to the schools, so everybody was just reacting on many things in the beginning. But we learned very quickly that it's very important to try to keep the schools open as possible. Actually, we never closed the schools completely. We had the schools open for the special education kids because they found it very difficult to study at home. And also if there was a single parent or a parent working for the health sector and long hours, then I mean, if you had a very good reason, then your child could go to school. But for the most of the children, they spent 2 months in distance learning when the pandemic hit Finland. That's when we also realized how important the role of the parents play in education, because if the parents are supportive and are very interested in how students and pupils learn, then it was no problem. But if the families had some problems and they were not that interested in what the children are learning, that's where we noticed that that there are problems. So by the end of the semester, mid-May, we decided to open the schools again so that all the teachers would meet all the children before they leave for the summer holidays, which normally starts in Finland in the beginning of summer. But from the administration point of view, I mean, I think if I just point few things what we did and what are now seen as very helpful. Because in the beginning there were lots of questions. So there were 4 groups that the administration set up. One was that a small group of experts who served all the questions that came into the administration almost 24/7 every day, as long as they could just stay in the office and answered all the questions. And the second group was working as a back office. So based on those frequent asked questions, they started preparing support materials so that anybody could then look up that type of support from the web and found at least most of the answer for many of the questions. Thirdly was that a small group of experts set up as a strategic group looking forward. What will be the next steps that Finland needs to take? And then for the rest of the civil servants, it was education as usual, because we didn't want to involve anybody to be very stressful in the situation, but continue as a normal. And last but not least, Ari may follow on that, how that was seen in schools. But schools were given 2 weeks time to decide how to teach, what platforms to use, and how to manage the distance learning time, but also how to prepare plans, how the groups are organized, how to diagnose if somebody gets ill, how to discuss about this epidemic for the smaller kids, because it's not only preparing you digitally for the distance learning, but it was a life-changing situation for many of the kids. So that's where we also saw the importance of paying attention for the social emotional skills as well. But during that 2 weeks, all the schools, as they are responsible for how to teach, and the infrastructure is already there in almost all the schools, so they could decide how to continue the education when the schools were closed for many of the kids.
Did all or did most school children have the kind of electronic equipment to be reached by? Do they have laptops or iPads? Has the school provided that beforehand, or was it somehow done during it? In Austria, the rollout of this kind of equipment is only starting right now.
Okay, most of the schools are quite well equipped, and most of the families have already computers, so it was just a discussion how to use the computers at home. I mean, if you have more children. And also the schools, I mean, during that 2 weeks time, they delivered or prepared a plan how to disseminate the computers for the children, and how they could come to school and pick up the laptops or other devices. Sometimes it was also, I mean, using the mobile phones, since all the children have mobile phones, and that was a good start as well.
And did you have a kind of a platform on the national level, or maybe on the district level, which teachers could use?
Actually, we took advantage of all the possible platforms that teachers felt comfortable in using, because then there was no delay in changing totally how you have been teaching beforehand. But now we have also, I mean, Mrs. Lindström is preparing a national platform, or it's not a platform as such, but it's a service so that different platforms can discuss with each across the sectors.
Okay. Maybe we can continue now on the stay on the Finnish side of this discussion, and I would like to ask Ari Militavita how what out of his own experience, what worked well in this time, and what perhaps where did you find deficiencies?
I can follow Jooni's ideas and thoughts quite well. I think it's what was the most important thing was that our teacher were already they have ability and skills to use digital equipments. We have a common platform. We have used it several years already. So it was we didn't have to learn or teach or find a new platforms for teaching. We have had that already. So what was the problem in our case was that of course we have teachers who don't normally use digital platforms in their education or on their teaching. So they have to a little bit try to find out what really means term digipedagogy. What is that in their own subjects? And that was all the time, of course, the question. And when teachers were discussing with each other, they asked how you manage to put that kind of approach in digital situation, or how to change it so that it works online, not in face-to-face situation. And of course that was all the time the thing. And of course in our case I have to say that almost everyone have a mobile phone, so they can use this platform via mobile phones also. They don't need any laptops.
But doing schoolwork on a mobile phone is not so easy, isn't it? I mean, this is a very small screen, and at least it was what I heard here in Austria of kids who did not have a laptop at home, that they were at a disadvantage.
But it's normally that when we are listening something or discussing about something, then this mobile phone it's enough, and we don't have so much to read. When they go home, when they are at home, they have their own devices. So almost all have their at home. They have computers with large windows and so on. But they normally use that device for reading and so on. They are looking Instagram and TikTok and so on. So it's quite normal for them to use mobile phones as a reading device also. So that it's for us adults and a little older, it's not so easy to read from mobile phones.
No, so kids are more used to that.
Yes, they are doing it secretly all the time during lessons.
All the time, yes.
You have to say that, put that device away, so let's concentrate on learning. But they have the skill to read it, and of course they can maximize it also.
Yes. In Austria, there were really disconcerting reports that a certain share of the students were just lost. They could not be found. They couldn't be contacted. They basically dropped out of the school system. Was this also an experience in Finland?
I think it's of course there is always, but before this pandemic, there was those students were lost. We have to go there and ask them now back to school and so on. But I think it was so that we found that there were some students which were more active, and they are more present via when they were in online. So it was both sides, that we lost somebody, but we also get more from those who didn't normally want to go to school and be face to face with teachers and each others. So
now let's turn to Austria again. Heinz Knaser, from your experience, what worked and where did you, what was frustrating or
Well, the
even
big
worse?
challenge of course was, to switch from literally one day to the other day, from analog to digital. And that was really what happened at the beginning. You just took kind of the analog teaching onto a digital platform. What really worked well was that we had the systems there in place already. Speaking, the software, all the students had their accounts. All the teachers had their accounts, but of course they were not used, to a great level during teaching. But it was easy to build on that and to establish, in our case, as was, I guess, in most schools in Austria, teams and get started from there. And a big asset, I can only talk about our school, but I guess it was the same all over Austria, was you felt really a spirit of of support groups within the staff. You always had a few who knew a little something, and they would pass on the information, and others would ask, and at the same time try to find out as much as possible. So in that respect, I think we really gained from the situation, if you could say so. Yeah.
How do you feel about the support that you received from the Ministry of Education and from the official school system?
I think they were also struck by this as everybody else in the beginning, but pretty soon you also had, I would call it, little islands of support groups that were organized then by the ministry, and put up online teacher training seminars that you could attend and learn from. So I think they did their best.
Okay. Tina Dvorak, this was a trial of fire for digitalization for the school and educational system. What lessons did you learn from this from this period? Something that we can take on also into the future.
Well, what lessons did I take? I hope I don't sound too bohemian, because I was quite lucky to not be stuck like literally in the operational handling of the pandemic on an educational side. I just looked it up shortly before before our panel discussion, and I checked that 2 years before the pandemic even started, we had OECD's TALIS survey, finding out that only half of teachers were letting students frequently using technology for projects or classwork. So obviously, necessity is the mother of invention, and in the absence of physical classes, of course, many teachers are catching the digital wave. I recognize and realize that everyone is talking about all the things that haven't worked, but as Mr. Knaser pointed out, and as Ms. Rauskala worked out, there have been some developments that really can be super useful for the further development of our system. And I'd like to really, I don't know, offer impetus for the process on how to strengthen those things, like be it more team spirit or the standardization and holding up the team spirit within the teachers team. I'd like to really cultivate the concept of support groups by the ministry, where teachers or leaders of schools can head to if they really have problems on a very low scale base, because I think we just need the exchange. And we really can learn a lot from those best practices when we're looking at the frameworks that made them possible. So that's
when you say best practices, what are you thinking of?
I'm thinking especially about the natural teamwork that has been established in the teacher's profession. Whereas, and I'm
among teachers.
Yeah, and I have to underline, I'm speaking as an external person, so please don't banish me for telling this. But the thing we watched over the last course of the years was that we have been cultivating a very silo-esque work. Be it in curricula when it came to subjects, be it in teaching certain subjects. And I think that cooperation and collaboration could be a lot more ventured. And I think they should be cultivated even more.
What I heard from so many also parents, and also from my own reading in my own newspaper, is that it all depends on the single teacher. Those who were engaged and knowledgeable and resourceful, things worked, and those who were not, things came to a standstill. Is this something which is typical also, you think, of the Austrian educational system? And is there any lessons to be drawn from that?
If I can still conquer the word, I don't think so, because that's what teamwork is all about. There is no single person on this planet who can handle everything. And I think together as a team, you would be better, be it on questions of technological solutions or on how to set up your lesson on a hybrid or distant learning or blended learning format. That's what teamwork is all about. And also, Mrs. Rauskaller mentioned the word interdisciplinarity. I think this is transformation in a nutshell, actually. We need more perspectives, more disciplines working all together towards a goal.
Mrs. Lindström, what has the pandemic and the experience of the last this year and a half done to digitalization and your own projects, but also to the larger issue in Finland?
Okay, this our Digi1. It's a system that combines all digital services and resources for learning and also the administration under the same platform. So it helps and facilitates all the actors, municipalities, commercial actors and larger actors, to cooperate and to make together a good tool for the students and for the teachers and also for the administration. And this pedagogical need arose even before the pandemic. So we started 2018, and during this pandemic, the pedagogical need rose even more. So we it pointed out our weaknesses. Because in Finland, our digital landscapes for schools has became very fragmented. So there are many actors and many platforms, and at the same time we have it's dominated by few service providers, and so limited openness, which it's a problem. And it's a problem because the information doesn't flow from one system to another, and it makes for the teachers or for the students a lot of manual work, which is required between these systems, and also the possibility for errors, and makes more work in one way. So these points were arisen during the pandemic, and we have worked with these problems, and then we realized also that when we started this development work in a single municipality, Vantaa, and we noticed quite soon that we cannot do this for need for just one municipality, and we need cooperation with the state, other municipalities, and many commercial actors. And we have now 7 developing municipalities. We are developing this together, and about 30% of Finnish students now. And the pandemic situation further highlighted the need of Digi1 system.
Mr. Kangasniemi, is this Digi1 system? Is this kind of the future also for the Finnish educational system? Is it something which is an essential element of what you're planning to do?
Yes, in a way, I believe so, because the Digi1 is a platform of platforms, so that none of the platforms get a dominant position in the market, which is sometimes very harmful. So it's like breaking the technology provider silos, so that they need to obey certain set of standards and rules. And for the learner, it looks so that with the one single sign-on, you get access to all the services, and you don't need to remember all the passwords for the different services. So it's like building a new layer on the top of the existing big platforms, and that's what we are building. And it's believe me, it's not easy, but it's doable, and we hope to be there in 2 years, that we will have that in that functioning. And yes, in a way, I see it's the future.
Are these private platforms, private providers, or are these public systems which are somehow competing?
It's mostly like we know that Teams is dominating, Google is dominating, yeah, from one okay. hand. So this is like combining all these systems, and it's not so that it would become the dominant model, but it's something that integrates all of these public services and also the commercial services.
And once this is really in place, what will it change for teachers or for students?
The main function would be easy to use systems.
Okay, so it would just be easy. It's just functionality.
Yes.
To make it easier. Maybe we can look also a little bit into the future. What has to be done to also maybe to fill these frames, digitalization systems and software and platforms, but education is also about content and ideas and change of mind. So I would like to hear a little bit about your ideas. How can the educational systems in your country take advantage of these technological opportunities in a way that will really maybe also improve education as a core. Iris Rauskala, maybe you can start.
Yes, of course. I was just listening to Joni Kangasniemi's explanations, because we have a quite similar project in Austria at the moment. So it's a portal platform, so to say, just to bring together all the different software from school system administration, from organizing classrooms, up to our edutech, so digital media, digital resources. Every now and then we have platforms and applications and so on in Austria. And we just follow the same approach at the moment. And I know what you mean. It's not easy. And we hope to be there in 2 years' time as well. So to bring together all the data of the Austrian school system into a single sign-on approach, and not differentiate whether it's a federal teacher, whether it's a local teacher, but that they can all, well, just get to the applications they need with a single sign-on functionality. So makes me quite happy to hear from Finland that you have a similar approach, so to say. When it comes to the future, because why is this so important? I mean, just to one comment on these architecture and data situations. I mean, you cannot communicate this to the public because nobody will understand the difficulties bringing together all these data flows and all these applications. On the other hand, it's really costly, and you cannot communicate for 2 years because nobody will use it unless all the applications bring out even more effective system and well, functionalities that teachers and students can use. And therefore, this work is really hard. And you just have to go through it to well, get into the future. This is the question from Eric Fry now. I mean, let me differentiate different approaches. I mean, I think we have infrastructure now in Austria. We have internet. We roll out digital devices. That's fine. But we have to get into a new pedagogic setting. This was already mentioned also from our experts, also from Tina Dvorak. I think this is the most important aspect. We have to train teachers how to use all these digital tools and media sources to have interesting scenarios in class for pupils. So it's not pushing more knowledge into the brains of the students, but it's really bringing learning to the heart of the students. So this is what I mean with interdisciplinarity. We have some problems with this in Austria because we have this really strong Humboldt tradition where all the disciplines or the subjects are for themselves, and it's quite hard to bring them together. We know from Finland that you have what's called phenomenal learning. So you somehow try to explain climate change, you explain consumer behavior, you bring really things that are of interest to pupils to the heart and center of learning. And I think this is something that we have to now make the next step to it, and really also bring in good ideas how to use digital devices and tools and software in any subject and in any classroom. So this is really the first step, and then getting into a more holistic approach of learning and bringing learning to the individual sphere of pupils. So make modularized and individualistic approach reality. This is maybe adaptive learning. So if you have a learning environment like maths or vocabulary, where you immediately get a response from the system, whether the answer is right or wrong, this does something with the learning approach, of course, of the pupils. And this is where we really want to get to. And then, of course, we also want to improve digital competencies. So computational learning, computational thinking, problem solving, algorithm coding, just the subject as such is, of course, also something we have to improve. And if we really manage these aspects, so improve teacher training in respect to using digital devices and software in classrooms, get a new concept of pedagogic learning anyway, and also have a more adaptive approach to individualistic learning, I think then we are quite happy in Austria. And some of these aspects are already functioning. So to say a higher secondary maybe is a bit advanced. As also Tina Dvorak already mentioned, something that is really working very well in Austria and nobody ever mentions. But I think we now really need to improve also for primary and lower secondary.
Interdisciplinary learning always sounds very good. It's often difficult probably to implement. What are the biggest obstacles to that? Would I also ask you, Ms. Raskala?
Well, because our teachers usually are trained for a subject only, or for 2 subjects. They usually are not trained how to be a good coach to the pupils. I mean, also the perspective of the teacher as a profession is of course under challenge, because our teachers are used to be the one in classroom who knows everything. And if there are pupils who maybe know more, like in the field of digital devices or software and so on and so forth, they feel challenged. And I think this has to change. So the perspective of what is a good teacher should be changed. Our teachers simply are not trained for this. So I think we need to change teacher training. So not only giving all the knowledge to pupils, but just help them to organize problems and to find all the knowledge that they need for solving these problems in the internet example given, or in any kind of resources. I think this could be the approach.
Tina Dvorak, is this what you have in mind when you say what really digitalization is really about? That it's not just about new equipment?
Yes, definitely in parts, but I'd really underline the fact that we need to develop some digital didactics as well.
Okay.
So it's very, very ambitious, our 8-point plan, and it's just starting now. And I followed Mrs. Rauskaller at different occasions on lighting out the 8-point plan, and it's really very holistically thought. But what I'm missing, it's kind of like everything is starting at the same time. We are first not really, we haven't established the digital didactics at universities for teacher training, and the traditionally grown subject silo thinking is something we might need to break up, definitely. But I'd rather also give the idea on there are so many potentials on technology, and this is like the first step we take. But when we look at the time horizon of 5, 10, 15 years, there will be AI in technology. There will be like something we haven't touched yet, and maybe shouldn't, EdTech, and all the robotics, learning analytics, who would own your learning analytics, the whole blockchain technology, whatsoever. There are a lot of potentials, and I would really like and love to hold a discourse about, on a national level, which potentials are there, like potentially, and which one do we want to use. And it should be really a vision that's not like we have the plan and it's being rolled out at this very moment, but we need to kind of think in wider periods than just legislation periods, because technology is changing immediately and rapidly. So I think we should also start now to hold the discussion on what are we really expecting from technology in education. And as I mentioned in the beginning, rather focus on the learning with technology and not the technology used, obviously, because this will change rapidly. And secondly, that's something I've also learned working within the educational system. I feel we need to kind of find a way to guarantee the financing of all those undertakings. I think that's the right word.
Okay. Yes.
Yes.
Mrs. Lindström, what once you've created a platform of platforms, where do you see the future? What has to be done in the next years to make use of these potentials? You can also speak from your experience as a teacher, I think, as you were until quite recently.
Yes, I think the whole whole thing and the main key idea is always has to be that the users, the students, are in the center of all activities, and we have to like replace ourselves to the students' point of view. So we have also noticed that the well-being and learning is very connected to each other. So there has to be a joy of learning too, and the students have to and get feedback from their learning, and it's very important to motivate them also with that, and then they can make their own aims and goals, and also a better understanding of the family situations and the whole idea that we have to make an educational partnership between homes and the schools as well, and it's very important, because the learning is in the main idea, and all the systems and peoples around the students are helping her or him to learn things and to get the aims and the goals for them. I think those are the main
Yes.
ideas.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Mr. Kangasniemi, what are your longer term plans to improve and develop the Finnish educational system?
Back to the new normal.
Okay.
Learn from the epidemics what needs to be changed for permanently, and what are the support mechanisms we need to have in place when we recover from the epidemic. But if I look forward, I mean, education systems always have two tasks. One is to teach the best of the past, so the lessons that you need to learn in order to survive and be in the culture and know all the important things. But it is utmost as important to prepare the learners for the future. And nowadays, nobody knows what the future looks like, because the digital leap that has been taken during the past 2 years or 2 decades or 50 years, I mean, the progress of how the digitalization changes our lives in the future, it just speeds up. We will lose a lot of jobs, so we need to prepare the learners so that they would create their own work, own jobs in the future. We will have a very fascinating role for the automation, virtual reality, what the 5G networks, 6G networks brings to us. It's quite, it might be scary, but it's also extremely exciting. But yet, coming back to the basics, what can the school teach for the learner? It can only teach how to learn well and create a passion that you want to learn more throughout the whole of your life. And if the school can do that, then we are on the winning side.
Let's stay in Finland. Mr. Milivita, what would you like to see change in your classroom in coming years? What are you? Yeah.
I think I have to say something after Joni's ideas. I'm really trying to find out how we arrange the teachers support each other, how they support each other. And I have a great trust on, we call it community of practices, that we have a teacher community which shares their common domain. They have networks, they have possibilities to meet each other, they have possibilities to change ideas, and they have a really good practice with their own students. And then when all teachers are feeling well, they have support from each other, of course, from their principals, and that is the future place. That is the place for in the future, which gives for all our students and pupils more opportunities to get real teaching, real learning environments, real opportunities to focus on learning and focus on future. And I think it's when we use these all digital devices and all the opportunities together, I think that's the future, because perhaps we can open our doors more often and go to be as wild as possible in the forest and in the field, but still having the common, because we have those communication devices, we can change ideas, we can collect ideas and gather them together, being in different places, but still all together in the virtual world what we have created for this, for example, for this student group. But I think it's more, it gives more freedom, more space where we can work when in the future.
Same question to Heinz Knaser. What would you like to see change in your classroom, in your school, in the next few years?
I think the main focus should be utilization now, meaning make use of the digital tools that are given to us now. But at the same time, digitalization cannot be the main goal. It's still teaching. It's still, I don't know who said it before. Parents realized during the pandemic that it all depends on the teacher, how engaged the teacher is, and all that, and that is not going to be changed by digitalization. It's how well a teacher knows how to use these tools and how engaged he is in bringing these technologies, into the classroom. That's going to be the main focus, and it's I think, and if we take a look at what's happening in the world, especially in the industrialized world, it's about cooperation. You cannot work on your own with your tablet or whatever. The big leaps are into interdisciplinary work, where people from various fields work together and make use of the tools they have. And I think that's going to be the main focus.
I saw that there were several through the chat function questions, comments coming in. I couldn't read them, so I will ask Victor Fleischer now to basically give us a few of them, a few of these concerns of our participants, of our audience, so our panel can respond.
Yes, thank you. I will try. There were a few questions put in the comments, personally to me or in the general comments. We have two pretty specific questions towards Finland. The first one goes to, we already discussed it, the training of the teachers. It is the question, how is it organized in Finland? How many hours do teachers have available for further training? And who decides upon what is trained actually and what kind of training teachers do? And the second question, also in the Finnish direction, would be, has there been a special funding for evidence-based research alongside the pandemic situation, which was maybe financed by the public, by the government? So these two very specific questions, I think, in the direction of Finland. And then you saw it maybe on the comments, there were some more general discussions on the Austrian system. The first one was a comment by a teacher.
Maybe let's respond to the Finnish ones first, and then we go to the Austrian ones. Yes, teachers training. Yeah, and the second one was for Finland. Victor, was
the question whether evidence-based research was
evidence-based. Yes, the evidence-based research. Yes. So, Mr. Joni Kangasniemi, what can you say about that?
Yes. I was a bit hesitant, should Finland advise Austria what to do, but I try. I would highly recommend the model, what we call the digitutor model, meaning that in every school you find one teacher who is more interested in digital technologies and pedagogies than others. And we have kind of like promoted that idea that each school should have at least one person who could be named as a digitutor, and his or her role would be to support the other teachers, and the other teachers could come to that teacher and ask for advice that I would like to do something differently with my class with the digital devices. Can you help us? What would work well? And that way we have very, how do you say that? The way how the other teachers are attached to new knowledge is very little. You don't need to go to be trained, but you get help when you need it in real life situation for the real life challenges and problems. And the only thing what the ministry then gives is funding so that you will get some extra salary because you need to spend more time in helping also the other teachers. But the other one is that we also train the trainers. They have collective days where they change all the best practices and build on these communities of practice, what Ari was mentioning. They are sharing what works, what doesn't work, how they did it, and then they go back to school and continue the work so that they know what type of equipment is available in the schools, so that they can easily use that one as a tools for the teachers. So digitutor model,
Yes.
if you Google that,
okay.
You should find some information.
Okay. Okay, great. Regarding this evidence-based approach also to education, are the authorities making use of educational academic research of those?
Even our teacher training is based on research evidence. So the teachers become researchers of pedagogies themselves so that they can follow all the latest research. And And I also need to mention that when the pandemic started, the ministry already started a research program. So the researchers started immediately look into what happens in the schools when the schools were closed. And by August, already last year, we had the preliminary research findings available for the decisions makers, because they ask questions from the students, from the parents, from the teachers, from the school leaders, what worked and what did not work. So we could easily address then those areas that did not work already in the beginning of this semester in August, when the schools started again. So research-based
yes.
has a very important role in developing education in Finland.
Okay, Ari Milivita, can you say just a few words about teachers training? What is the about the main structure and points of it?
If you think about our subject teachers, so who are teaching in lower and upper secondary school, we have you can study pedagogical issues or pedagogy 1 year. It's full-time job to study pedagogy. Before that, you have studied your subjects. For example, I have studied mathematics and chemistry 3 or 4 years. But after that, I have to make a pedagogical studies. And normally it's so that there are theoretical studies about 20-25% of that area. Then there are certain kind of studies, special education studies. Then there are some other focused on didactics, how to what kind of didactics you follow in certain subjects. Then we have about 40% that pedagogical studies, it's teacher practice. We have 2 separate teacher practices, and they normally do it in Finland. We have 11 teacher training schools. They have those teacher practices in our teacher training schools, where our teachers, like me, we are teacher educators, so we guide them, support them, and with them we arrange and plan those practice lessons. They have to have some practice lessons, and of course, to support these practice lessons, we have school seminars, we have different kind of group works about special things, for example, chemical safety, or how the group works in a classroom, what kind of arrangements you have to make, and so on. So it's divided in, I can say that it's teacher practice, then didactic studies, and then we have these common pedagogical studies. This is the very rough
so pedagogy
system.
Yes, pedagogy plays an important role in that.
Yes.
Yes. Victor Fleischer, what was the main, maybe 2 questions for the Austrian side of this panel?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's questions, it's more remarks, or very big questions, let's say that way. I fear that the time left is not enough for them, but one remark by a teacher was that school autonomy, as we have it in Austria, was one key success factor for managing the crisis and all around it. So maybe reactions to that. And the second discussion in the forum is about how equal or unequal and how selective the Austrian school system is, taking into account the separation at the age of 10, but also taking into account the multi-sided system in the vet sector, in the vocational education sector. So there is a vivid discussion in the forum. I think we can continue it here on the panel.
Okay, so maybe Tina Dvorak, yes, I mean, the early separation in Austria, I think, which is different from Finland, is something which is the big debate here, and often the point of criticism. What would your response be here?
Should we really start this discussion and end up in a ideological dead end because we couldn't move in there. I'd rather
Okay.
I'd rather talk like obviously, and I think publicly known, the Federation is in favor of a common school from 6 to 14
Yes.
without any breaks, highly individualized, with a high level of autonomy, but it can't be built on the green meadow, so to say. So I'd rather leave this discussion out
Okay.
and focus on the matters that lie behind it, which is individualization, respect of individual speeds in learning, respect of different chances when entering your educational career. And yeah, that's the matters behind our idea. But I've ended to say that I'm in favor of the common school because
Yes.
then this is where conversations end, depending on whom you talk to.
They certainly do. Iris Haskala, this question of school autonomy, something which is often proposed, demanded, also promised, and then when you hear principals, they often tell you, no, this is not really, it's not what we were hoping for, and it's always falls short of what at least the principals and often teachers want. How far along are we there, and should we go further in this direction?
This is not really a field of expertise of my organizational unit, of course, but what I just can say is that we do some progress in quality management. So, I mean, if you want autonomy, then you need to know what is happening at your school. Then the principal, of course, is in responsibility to, of course, follow the success rate of pupils, to follow individual learning paths of pupils, to have an idea about the data, about where the pupils go to afterwards, so after primary school, secondary, whatever. And I think we can only talk about autonomy if on the other side also responsibility is given and also taken by schools. And of course, some or most of the schools that I got to know recently, might it be in prices, might it be in competition, might it be in any, well, wherever you get to know schools, they show responsibility for success rates, example given of pupils, for individualistic learning approaches, for diversity, example given especially in larger cities, which is of course a challenge. I mean, where do all these discussions that we don't want to get into, where do all these discussions come from? It's just a divide in Austria between country regions and bigger cities. We have different school environments here, and we have to face these different challenges. And we have to support schools that they can just tackle these individualistic challenges. And if this responsibility is taken, also the support is given, and quality management tells us something about approaches and about success, I think then we are on a good way to success and to autonomy. School would be nothing without the autonomy of teachers, taking responsibility of their class, of learning outcomes. But the ministry, of course, has to answer all the questions from different stakeholders, and therefore we need to know what is happening. And I think we have to somehow get the right impression what is responsibility give and take, and what is support, what is controlling and not control. And then I think it's quite fine. And in the last years, there were quite a lot of different approaches with the big reform to unpolitize the system. And quality management is only one of these elements. So the glass is half full and half empty. It depends on the perspective you take.
Yes.
I think it's half full, even more than half full.
We're slowly coming to the end of the allotted time, and maybe also of the attention span of some of our audience. I would like to use this a final round just for like a really short word wrap, maybe just a sentence or two from all of you. When you look ahead 10 years from now, what do you think will you say about this experience, education, schools and the education system in the pandemic? Maybe Mrs. Lindström, would you like to start?
Okay, thank you. I believe that we have DigiOne. We have put it together, so all the actors are in one place behind one login, and then we have common rules of the game for all partners of this ecosystem, and then we have open interfaces between systems and data flows between systems to another systems. And then the cooperation, I think it's the key word here. We cooperate with each other, with other municipalities, other commercial actors, and we all get benefit somehow. That's my key words.
Okay. Yes, Ari Milivita, what will you tell your students or the teachers you're training about what it was like in this 2 years of COVID?
I think it's what this history tells us, and what they look at in the past 2 years. They think that we managed to handle this kind of situation. So we trust on our teachers, we trust on our learners that we can manage in any case. What is going to happen? Who knows what is going to happen? And we will manage after all.
Okay. Heinz Knaser, what will be words to your students? Cannot hear you. Cannot hear you. I think you're muted.
Sorry. If I got you correctly in the beginning, the question was like, what was
10 years from now, when you
from now,
talk about this year
what am I going to say about the past?
What can you say about this past? Yes.
I think I will be able to say that we profited from the crisis.
Okay.
Meaning that, you know, in every crisis there's opportunities that you can take or not, and I hope that in 10 years time I'll be able to say that we made the best of the opportunities, whatever they will be.
Yes.
Future will
okay.
tell.
Yes. Joni Kangasmini, what can be your thoughts 10 years from now?
I hope to be very optimistic. However, there is always a small number of people who have suffered from the epidemic and will continue suffering even after 10 years. But most of the people will go on, and even some of them won't even remember the time when the epidemic hit us. In 10 years' time, I hope that the learners will learn even more. I hope that the schools will be more transparent so that the schools can learn from each other, and the systems can be so flexible so that we can exchange all the good practice between different education systems.
Yes. Tina Dvorak.
I'll offer my rainbow-colored unicorn fantasy. So looking back in 10 years to the pandemic, I hope we started to develop an ambitious vision that wasn't restricted, but furthermore established long-term goals that everybody agreed on. I think we have built a common view and definition of digitalization and agreed on profiting from its potentials in the best possible way. I think we will have cultivated cooperation and inclusion on all levels, like between administration, teachers, institutions, science, nationally and internationally. And last but not least, the concept of trial and error is accepted system-wide, because we have learned to process mistakes productively. That's quite a huge step to take, but I think we will manage within the next 10 years.
Okay, thank you. Iris Rauskala, you have the last word.
Thank you. I mean, actually, we do not know in which situation we will be in 10 years' time. I mean, we have no idea whether the pandemic is over or that the next pandemic will be in. What about climate change and so on and so forth? I think it's not to lean back in 10 years' time and have a comfortable perspective on what was 10 years ago. I mean, 10 years ago from now, we had a financial crisis. So now we have a pandemic. So we have a big climate change at the moment. I think if we talk about 21st century skills and about good learning and bringing learning to the heart of all of our students, then it's, for me, the most important reason is to give them the opportunity and also just the knowledge or just the personal standing, so to say, or strength to know that they can cope with any situation that they will face in life. So this to me is the most important. We need to teach our pupils and give them any competence, skills, and what they need also from personal behavior and perspective to just go on actively designing and coping their future life. So this is what I would in any way hope to find in 10 years' time.
Well, we've come to the end of this webinar. I think this has been another good example of how crisis can be turned into opportunity, because without the pandemic and this digitalization push, we probably would not have had this chance really to put Finnish experts and practitioners and Austrian and Austrian experts and teachers here on the same panel and talk to each other thanks to technology and digitalization. And so I want to thank you, all of you, very much for participating. I hope you learned something from it, from the experience and the visions of the other country. I certainly did. And I also would like to thank the audience for listening and for participating with your comments and for your discussions, which were apparently even more intense than what I saw. And also, of course, thank you for the Federation of Industries for putting up this event, and Business Finland and the Embassy of Finland supporting it. And I wish you a very nice summer, or late, no, it's no longer summer, although here in Vienna it feels like summer. I think in Helsinki it's different, but a fall evening. Very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye.